Hey there, everybody. It is Thursday afternoon, and it's your buddy Chop It On. We're coming at you with MLB Made Easy for June 17th. I am going to dive in to the routine really quickly, and then I'm going to actually branch out into Domination Station today, and we're going to talk a little bit about cash game building and showing you a little bit more detail about how to acquire those scores using ownership, because it's worked really well for a lot of people. I get a lot of feedback inside the Army from our VIPs telling me that they're grateful that this came to the forefront because now they are understanding how to build better lineups by just taking one little simple mental shift, and that is not so much looking at projections, but looking at what everybody else agrees with or eating more chalk. And that is what's making the difference in their research in terms of helping them find better players as well as find the right plays for the slate. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Of course, I'm a coach and contributor here at DFSArmy.com. One-stop shopping, all things daily fantasy sports, PGA, NBA, doesn't matter what you play. You've heard the routine. Like and subscribe the video. Down there in the comments section or the description, you'll find links to the tools that I use, to the coupon code to becoming a VIP, etc. But without further ado, let's dive in today to the routine that I will start calling it, probably because each and every day we're going to do very similar things to start every day off. Then we'll talk about a little bit more something different down the road at the end of these videos. But when I'm looking at the pitchers tab in our research station, the first thing I'm doing is knocking off the early games so that I can get to just the main slate. And you'll see me use the filter, and you'll see me use the sorting, and you'll see me use that stuff in this tool because I want you to see how easy this tool is to manipulate. I slide over to the chop shop. I don't look at a lot of these other numbers. I don't need to. K-score and W-score. I was actually asked to go over K-score and W-score, and instead I will just post a link to the video that describes them and how to use them and exploit them in the description of this video later today. So you'll have that information for you. Higher K-score is good. Anything over 500 is a pretty good number. You can see we got about 6 pitchers to choose from today. Ohtani, Musgrove, Woodruff, Rich Hill, Marquez. You can say what you want to say about each individual pitcher. I'm just looking at this number, and I'm going to go by that. That is strikeout potential in their matchup today. And I'm going to start looking at who's the top. 634, Ohtani, $11,000. Is there anything that makes more sense? Well, 606 is a decent drop, actually, but so is the decent drop in price to Musgrove. So that, to me, is about a coin flip. Either one's pretty okay. Either one's a pretty good decision. You might look at something like even their W scores, the WOBA allowed in the matchup, how risky it might be for them to get thumped today. That's pretty close, right? 15 points apart, 20 points apart. Pretty good, pretty similar numbers. I might drop here to a 509, a little less risk, but a 554 is not the K potential, not the strikeout potential for a Brandon Woodruff. And he's only 200 for the $200 price difference. I'm going Ohtani and 80 points more in K score. 8,300 might compare to a Musgrove. 547, that's 50 points. I don't know. I'm thinking Ohtani and Musgrove are the main dudes. Doesn't mean somebody else isn't going to pop off. It just means that these are the guys bang for the buck. Quick glance, first glance. Maybe we talk a little bit more today and we dig in a little deeper and we find something a little bit better. But I can't see it being Rich Hill, Marquez, Dunn, Morton, Stroman, Cease, Quitting. I mean, these are all tournament picks at best. These are going to be your cash type pitchers up here, top 3, maybe top 4, but it's probably going to come down more to Ohtani and Musgrove. Okay? You might check, we'll check when the ownership when we get to the domination station. But then I flip it and I use the W score and I bring the top numbers to the top here, the big numbers to the top. Anything over about 650 is getting to be a pretty good number here, maybe even 630 because it goes pink. Make the colors easy to read, right? Just look for the pink and the reds and stuff like that on the W score, and you're doing pretty good. That brings, I can't pronounce the name, but Hendricks and Gant and King and Marquez. Marquez is not a good pick in pitching, even with a decent K score, because he's going to be very boom or bust. He's not a good cash pick. He's fine in tournaments, but he's not a good cash pick, okay? And he's probably a little lower owned in tournaments for the 535 potential that he has today. So bear that in mind if you want to use a little bit of him. I wouldn't go crazy and use 40 or 50% of him in my lineups, but I would use maybe some in case he pops off. But these are generally the pitchers you're going to attack tonight, down to about Dylan Cease. So I'm looking for cheaper pitchers in here, and that's what I'm getting other than Matt Manning, who's a debut. There's nothing on him. So you can take that with either LA's going to have a good night or Matt Manning's going to have a good night. The pitcher has the advantage because he's never been seen before, or maybe, who knows, okay? That's a crapshoot. But you're looking here at New York, New York, Atlanta, Toronto, Milwaukee, Tampa, maybe some Houston. These are the teams that are most likely to pop off today. And I'm doing a little thing called Power Score, and it uses this W score really, really well. New York, Atlanta, Tampa, Toronto, Milwaukee, New York Mets, Houston, LA Angels, if you want to take a chance on that, are probably the teams that I'm going to stack. This number went 5 for 5 or 6 for 6 last night in picking the team that scored over 6 runs. There were more teams that went over 6 runs last night. So it's not an all-inclusive number, but it works pretty well at finding the teams most likely to go off. And that's 10 seconds in. That's how you figure it out. You go into the trends tab next. And again, you kick off the time slot here. These early games got to go. And now I'm just going to straight jump to the WOBA and the ISO trends. And I'm going to use a filter greater than or equal to 400. And here on the ISO side, I'm going to use greater than or equal to 200. Those are elite season-long numbers. I use them as a benchmark because they help me determine over a 7 or a 14-day window who's running hotter than elite over a season. Granted, you might look at things like the 229 and the 385 and say, Freddie Freeman's hitting the ball over 7 days with more power than he typically does over the season, right? I like using two season numbers here, but 30 days fine too. He's pretty cold at 204 and he's at 305. 204 is still a great number, especially over 30 days. 385 is even better. 485 WOB over 351 for the year. He's running hot right now, so you might consider using him in your lineups. You come over here, you sort those teams off alphabetically. You get Atlanta, you get 3 Detroits. Detroit is in an interesting position tonight. You might actually give them a little bit of a boost because of it. Houston's in a very good position tonight, potentially. There's 5 guys running hot right now. If you look at them, what do we got? Altuve, Brantley, McCormick, Straw, and Correa. If all 5 land in the lineup tonight, you might want to include them. Look at these WOBAs. These guys have over 7 days. In some cases, 5, 6, 700 WOBAs. Those are astronomical numbers. They will cool back down. They'll come back down to their averages. But for the time being, play them while they're hot. They're outproducing their salaries. They're outproducing their prices right now. Okay? And then wait for these numbers to dip off a little bit. When these numbers start to drop off, these numbers will follow, and these numbers will follow, and they'll be overpriced, and you'll be able to get off of them while they're cold. Pretty simple stuff. But that's generally the routine. We found pitchers, we found stacks, we found the hottest hitters in the league. We're going to boost them in our optimizer. But when I jump into the optimizer, I'm looking for ownership projections. I want to see who is the highest owned pitcher on the slate. Musgrove, by a lot. All right, so people aren't using Ohtani. They're using Musgrove to save some money. Fine. In a cash game, I probably eat Musgrove. In a tournament, I'm probably looking to get off of these guys, take some others, or certainly stack in some other ways, or find a way to get a little bit different build based on that salary. Maybe I go up in pitcher and down in bats, whatever the case may be. But for the 38%, I'm probably just going to eat it in cash games. I can also go back to the All tab here and use the hitters and start looking for who's showing a lot of Milwaukee, a lot of Atlanta. Probably my chalk builds. So if I just put a smidge of randomness on play for about 15 lineups, don't put any kind of an ownership cap on there yet, use a couple of unique players and just run it. What I'm going to find over those 15 lineups is who the optimizer likes. This is basically running the tool naked. And all I'm looking for is, give me some ideas. Give me an idea where the projections go, because the projections don't vary too much throughout the industry. So there's the Milwaukee, there's some Houston, there's some St. Louis, which is interesting. Some more St. Louis, which is interesting. So we're using Musgrove. You might find some people using St. Louis bats, which you would have thought it would have been, whatever we mentioned before with Milwaukee and Houston and whatever else. But clearly it's not. You're using a lot of different varieties. Okay, good. Now, that's where the projections are leading us. If I actually want to take this up a notch and get up to about a 200 ownership cap on the low side, everything over this is using a combined ownership of 200 points or more. It's using this percentage as points, and it's making sure that all of these numbers in the lineup add up to at least 200, which means that it's forcing these high chalk players into my lineup. I'm using the machine to trick itself into giving me a heavy chalk lineup. And once I see these numbers, I can come down here and sort by ownership percentage. Instead of fantasy points, sort by ownership percentage to 11. I want to know if I can build bigger than that. But I'm looking at Musgrove. There's your Milwaukee bats again. There's a Houston, whatever. So again, and not, 2 Atlantas, 2 Milwaukees. That's what it was. It was Milwaukee and Atlanta. Either way, these are guys that are going to be popular in your cash games. I'm trying to find the highest number I can possibly build for. So let's go to 220. Let's cut this down to about 10 lineups, just so it'll build a little bit faster. And the randomization just mixes things a little bit. The unique players just mixes things a little bit so that I can, the machine's building off of fantasy points per dollar, and it's building off of, basically median projections. And I'm trying to trick it into building by ownership because I believe that if you hide in the chalk in cash games, you're very, very hard to beat. You're making everybody else take those low-owned gambles to get around you. Sometimes pivots make sense, but most of the time, a heavy chalk core is what's going to get you there. So Musgrove again, 228. Braves, 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 Atlanta, Atlanta. So there's your 3x2. And that's about as much as I would stack. Let's try and get up one more to 230. See how this ends up working. I'm looking for the optimizer to shut down on me and tell me I can't build you 10 lineups. When it tells me that, I know I can't go any farther. I wish it was doing a little bit faster today than it is, but it's not. So maybe we got to go to 240 because it's getting me 10 lineups just easy. So if I go 240, let's go 250 and see if that'll work. It'll tell me pretty quickly if it can't do it. There, see, can't do it. So I got to come back down to 240 and build this way. Now it should show me, oh, not enough. So 230 is the number. If 230 is the number, even if it's a 235 or something, if 230 is the number, that's the number we're going to go off of. What I'm going to tell you is building in that much chalk in all the way up to that 230 number is going to actually limit your upside because you're not going to be different than anybody else. If your guy has a good day, so does everybody else's. If your guy's a bad day, so does everybody else's. If you find yourself 10 or 15 points behind going into the 5th and 6th innings of late games, then you're not going to be able to catch up because you guys that you have left to play are just too highly owned for you to gain any ground on anybody. So what you need to make that smart pivot is to get a little bit different. And the way I would say that is we'll build about 10% below this number. So 230, what's 10% of that? 23 points. So we come down to about 200, right? So when I look at these chalky lineups, again, I'm seeing a lot of Milwaukee and quite a few Braves. And it's going to be the same guys in a lot of cases, a couple of Tampa Bay Rays. They're in a good spot tonight as well, actually. But I'm using Musgrove as my pitcher, and this is just going to shuffle in and out a few of these same guys, right? So you're getting a lot of these different builds. This is the chalky build. Watch what happens when I drop this number back down to 200. Remember how we didn't see the Milwaukee and Atlanta in that first build when we start. I start at 200 because that's usually the number or close to it. Sometimes on shorter slates it gets as high as 250, 260, whatever. And on bigger slates it can be as low as 170, 180, stuff like that. Generally I start around 200 and I go where the optimizer tells me to go. If it can't build that number of lineups, then I will drop the 200 number. If it can, I'll go higher, 210, 220, 250, 260 until I find the breaking point where the optimizer shuts down. And now all I'm doing is look, not as much Milwaukee, not as much Atlanta. It's not a 3x2, it's a 2x2. But if I come down here, a couple of Toronto bats, whereas before it might have been Tampa Bay Rays. There is a Ray in there, and there's only one Milwaukee bat as opposed. So even though I'm close, I'm using very heavy chalk players. I'm using Musgrove. I'm using, Ozzie Albies. I'm using, Brandon Lau. I'm using Christian Yelich. I'm using Acuna. These are high chalk players. They're going to be in a ton of people's lineups tonight. I do have a couple of lower owned spots like a Candelario and Arenado type player, and that's going to be just enough to get me just different enough that if these are the guys that are having the good days, then I'm pretty good to go. And that's where my research comes in because I might build around most of this stuff and then I might actually make a pivot or two. And that's what's making the difference. Staying within about 10% of that total chalk number, 20% for leagues, 50% for tournaments, you're going to post better scores. You're going to hide within the herd, but you're going to have those few pivots that break you loose and get you over the hump. And that's what's going to turn you into a better player. If you want more information like this, you want to see how to use these tools even more, you come inside and become a VIP at dfsarmy.com. It's just that simple. I'm Chopping On. This is Thursday, 6/17. Hopefully you guys liked the video. Hopefully you guys subscribe to the channel. And hopefully I see you guys back here again tomorrow when we break down another tool. Peace out, homies. We'll talk to you real soon.